Hunter Biden wasn't doing business with people that had 5-star ratings from the Better Business Bureau.
He wanted to investigate the bid guy. He was stopped from doing so.
How big of a role did Joe Biden play, is Joe Biden playing, in the Biden family business that Hunter Biden's integrally involved in that sends and receives money from all different corners of the world?
Congressional Republicans ramping up their investigations into alleged corruption by the Biden family. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer says his committee will soon reveal new disturbing findings about foreign money flowing into Biden family coffers. Meanwhile, top House and Senate Republicans, including Chairman Comer, sent a strongly worded letter accusing the Justice Department and the IRS of retaliating against whistleblowers in the Hunter Biden case. Joining us now is Eric Eggers, Vice President of the Government Accountability Institute and co-host of the Drill Down podcast. Eric, welcome to the show. It's always good to see you. Okay, so we have House Republicans who are accusing the Justice Department of slow walking their probes into President Biden. We also know that next week we're going to have FBI Director Christopher Wray testifying before the House on Wednesday, and we expect Attorney General Merrick Garland to testify in September. How likely is it that House Republicans will get any answers from these hearings?
Well, I think the true findings, that the bottom of the investigation, if you will, won't come from Christopher Wray. They won't come from Merrick Garland. They're going to come from the brave members of the investigating team, whether it's on the IRS or the FBI, that have actually looked into just how corrupt the Biden family is. The findings will come from the House Oversight Committee's acquisition of bank records. We now know that they've successfully obtained records from 2 additional banks. So that's 6 of the 12 bank accounts linked to the Biden family that the House Oversight Committee has access to now. That's where the information is going to come from. It's coming from following the money, finding the receipts, and I thank the House Oversight Committee for their diligent efforts. They're also going to be interviewing people soon. So the interviews that will matter, Lindsay, won't be from Chris Wray, I think, or Merrick Garland, but from Devon, Hunter Biden's former business associate. He's a convicted felon. He was integrally involved in every step of the Biden business scheme. And so I think that's where the true facts will emerge from. Speaking
of Devon Archer, there is concern from some conservatives that because he's a convicted felon, that it won't be taken seriously. His when he testifies before Congress, do you see that being true, that their concern is real?
Well, if you're concerned about convicted felons having, kind of credibility, and you need people that don't have a shoddy track record to have credibility in the Hunter Biden investigation, you've got slim pickings. Hunter Biden wasn't doing business with people that had 5-star ratings from the Better Business Bureau. He's not doing business in the high halls of legitimate international currency in London or France. He's doing business with people linked to the Chinese spy military regime. He's doing business with Ukrainian oligarchs. So, unfortunately, this is just the world in which we live. This is the world in which Hunter Biden's made millions of dollars. But I will tell you this, that I think while some people think that Devon Archer may not have a lot of credibility, I know the Bidens are actually quite concerned. It was reported over the weekend that former Republican member of Congress who's joined the Hunter Biden legal defense team, Jim Riggleman, is actually spending his 4th of July at the White House with Hunter Biden, who apparently spends quite a bit of time at the White House during the Biden family vacation. So if you're wondering, how closely linked, because that's the end of the day, that's the investigation, right? How big of a role did Joe Biden play, is Joe Biden playing, in the Biden family business that Hunter Biden's integrally involved in that sends and receives money from all different corners of the world? And so I think the fact that Hunter Biden's legal defense team is meeting at Joe Biden's White House over the 4th of July sends a very clear signal in that regard.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit, because I talk about, we see from this whistleblower, this IRS whistleblower, Gary Shapley, he said that he wanted to investigate the bid guy. He was stopped from doing so. And we also have the U.S. attorney in this case, David Weiss, who has come out and said this is ongoing, this investigation's ongoing. But we are also entering the 2024 presidential cycle. We know the FBI doesn't like to do investigations as they pertain to presidentials. What could that mean for this investigation if it is ongoing?
Yeah, I would love to believe the IRS that they haven't retaliated against the whistleblowers, but unfortunately for many Americans, the letters I, R, and S are a 4-letter word. And they haven't earned the credibility to be taken seriously. Remember, this is the same IRS that attacked conservative nonprofits during the Obama administration. This is the same IRS that's penalized and audited without cause for concern anybody that's been involved in, I think, just honest, diligent work. So the IRS doesn't have credibility in this regard. And you're absolutely right, Lindsay. The FBI has already proven that if we get within a certain window of an election period, that they're going to actively interfere. They suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop news reports in October of 2020 because they thought that it could be Russian disinformation, or they wanted other people to believe it might be Russian disinformation. That effectively, I think, swayed the 2020 election. You now have part of the whistleblower testimony that said they were told in September of 2020 not to interview certain people because it might interfere with the 2020 election. So you're absolutely right. The only thing that I think gives me pause about where this investigation may go is that you've got a certain amount of window before 2024 in which I think everything's on the table, because we've seen the wheels of justice seem to grind to a halt when it comes to protecting the Biden election business.
So far. Eric Eggers, great to see you this evening. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Now to the ongoing battle over government spending. The House is returning to Washington next week, where GOP leadership is seeking to push through key spending bills over expected objections from the most conservative House Republicans. At stake, preventing a GOP revolt and potential government shutdown in the fall. Joining us now is Mychael Schnell, congressional reporter for The Hill. Mychael, good to see you again. Okay, so we have these far-right conservatives who are pretty upset with Speaker McCarthy right now for his negotiations on the debt ceiling, where he agreed with President Biden to keep spending at 2023 levels compared to 2022 levels, which they wanted. What is it going to take to quell their concerns?
That is the key question right now that Kevin McCarthy is wondering, and all us reporters are wondering, and all other lawmakers on Capitol Hill are wondering to themselves, is what will appease these conservatives? What will make them pleased with the deal, have them not protest it, potentially support it? We just don't know at this point, right? We know the conservatives are pushing for the most conservative, the largest spending cuts possible. They want the most conservative spending package possible. What that actually looks like remains to be seen. Kevin McCarthy, in an effort to appease those conservatives, he and the appropriations chair in the House had decided to mark up appropriations bills at, as you said, levels below the debt limit deal, levels below 2023 levels at 2022 levels. But even that isn't enough as of now to appease those conservatives. A number of them are accusing McCarthy and leadership of using this budgetary gimmick called rescissions to make it look like they're cutting more spending than they actually are. So that's the name of the game right now. What exactly do conservatives want, and what will make them happy with the package at this stage of the game, which I will note, we still have plenty of time until September 30th. As of now, it remains to be seen how much of those spending cuts they'll be happy with to then support the ultimate package.
So I've spoke with some of those congressional Republicans who are threatening a government shutdown. That means they wouldn't agree to these bills and our government would go to a shutdown. They say they're okay with that. So how real are their threats?
Yeah, I mean, look, September 30th is the deadline for government funding. Now, typically in previous years, what we've seen happen is a continuing resolution be passed, which will essentially kick the deadline to December. But there's a question of, A, if there's not agreement on those 12 appropriations bills and they're not able to get passed through both chambers by September 30th, there's the question of, would these conservatives support a continuing resolution? That, again, remains to be seen. It's just right now we are too far out in the process, and there is still plenty of time, a little over, a little under 2 months for lawmakers to come to a consensus on these appropriations bills. But you're exactly right. A number of these conservatives, some of them are saying that, listen, it is what it is. We're not supporting an omnibus. Maybe they won't want to support a continuing resolution. We could see the country go into a shutdown, which of course is not unprecedented. We've seen happen in the past. But I think that the important part of that threat is how hard of a line these conservatives are holding when it comes to spending cuts. And you mentioned the debt limit deal that was made earlier this year. That was significant because the conservatives were unhappy with how McCarthy handled that. They didn't think that the spending cuts were aggressive enough. So they're taking their frustration from that debt limit bill and they're putting it all into this now appropriations fight. They're going to be pushing for as strong and as aggressive as spending cuts as they can get. And if they don't get what they want, it's entirely possible that they trigger potentially a shutdown come September.
Okay, so we know that Speaker Kevin McCarthy only has a 4-seat majority. Republicans only have a 4-seat majority in the House. His speakership could be at risk here. How concerned do you think he is about his job, and how may that play into how these negotiations happen?
This is going to be a real major test for Kevin McCarthy because, of course, as we've been talking about, the conservatives are still unhappy from that debt limit deal. And if they don't get what they want, remember, that's one of the concessions that McCarthy had to give up back in January, that just one lawmaker can force a vote on ousting the speaker. It's called the motion to vacate the chair. That's on the table. That's a possibility. It's in the conversation if conservatives don't get what they want. But again, I think it's a little premature to be talking about that possibility just because there's plenty of more time to hash out these differences and come to a consensus on these appropriations bills ahead of September 30th.
All right, it's going to be a busy week next week indeed, and the months to come as well. Mychael Schnell, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.